Cool. Alright, so we're going to cover the basics. What is SpaceX, if you guys don't know already? Why you should work there, and how you can actually do that. The fundamental mission of SpaceX is that a society in which we're multiplanetary is fundamentally more exciting than one we're not. And this is just like the core of SpaceX as a whole, is everybody really gives a shit about this. Like, everybody loves this mission, they care about it, they show up every day to work because they want to make this happen. The way we do that, our core values are to inspire the new generation and each other about spaceflight, lower the barriers to entry and lower the cost of spaceflight, develop all sorts of crazy new stuff to make it happen, and really just push the boundaries and make sure nothing's off the table when we're experimenting. Some cool milestones for SpaceX as a whole. Over a decade now, since we launched our first orbital rocket, it was the first private liquid-fueled rocket to ever reach orbit. That was the Falcon 1. Just a couple years later, on the first attempt, our now famous Falcon 9 rocket reached orbit on its first ever attempt, which is super exciting. And then, they've sort of been rolling ever since then. First private spacecraft ever visit the ISS. In 2014, we signed this really important contract for the company as a whole. We were like months away from not being able to continue. But NASA reached out to us and Boeing and signed a commercial crew contract to enable us to fly crew to the space station on our own private vehicles, which was like totally revolutionary and never been done before. The thing that probably made us most famous was in 2015, pioneering reusability, which is like a core pillar of like what SpaceX stands for and what we're pushing for the most, making rocketry more sustainable, more affordable, and definitely more exciting. A couple years after that, we relaunched a booster for the first time, proving the concept out. And actually, we have that first landing booster sitting outside my office right now. So I can see that every day when I go to work, which is pretty neat. In 2018, we launched the Falcon Thick, as I like to call it, the Falcon Heavy. Basically, the rocket's so nice, we did it thrice. Super heavy lift capacity vehicle. We actually have 5 launches scheduled for this year. And that thing is just like an absolute behemoth, currently the heaviest lift rocket in the world. The contract that we won in 2014, the commercial crew contract, that required a redesign of our capsule. So the one that made it to the space station in 2012 was the Dragon 1 capsule. We redesigned to make it a much more modern, future-proof design. And that was proved out in the Demo 1 mission. That was like an unmanned or an uncrewed mission to the space station as a proof of concept of the whole concept of operations and flight. And then there was the Demonstration 2 mission, which was a like half-crewed mission with Bob and Doug that you guys may have seen, the first launch from American soil with American rockets since the space shuttle, which was super exciting. And then we actually followed through on our first operational mission for the commercial crew program at the end of last year, just about a year ago. Cool, so we're based out of quite a few different locations. I work in the headquarters in Hawthorne, California, just outside LA. We have about 6,000-ish employees there right now, which is pretty crazy. That's like where the majority of our vehicle engineering gets done. It's where we have like satellite programs, we have launch programs, we have like they build the Starlink terminals there. There's always a lot going on. We have Starbase, which is in Brownsville, Texas. It's basically the southernmost point in the continental United States, which makes it ideal for launching rockets because you get the extra benefit of the Earth's velocity closer to the equator. And that is where we're building our Starship rockets in our Starship facility, and hopefully our Starbase town as well. Additionally, we have McGregor, Texas, which is our state-of-the-art testing facility. That's where all our rocket engines are tested and fired, as well as our stages, first and second stages, for like validating the assembly of the rockets themselves before they go to fly. We have 2 launch sites. We fly out of the famous Cape Canaveral Air Force Station and Space Force Station now, rather. We fly out of Launch Complex 40 as well as 39A, which is where the Moon missions and the shuttle also lifted off, which is super, super cool. And then we also fly out of Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, which is about 2 hours from our headquarters, and that's where we always go to watch the rockets when they're going off the West Coast, which is super cool. Additionally, we have headquarters for the Starlink program in Redmond, Washington, with other design offices in Irvine, California, and then some legal offices in DC, and then some other stuff sort of scattered around, but these are the big ones. Cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the services we provide. These are the launch vehicles in our fleet currently. We have the Falcon 9 rocket, which is the one that made us famous. We will see if this video Works. Oh, sick. You guys got volume on here? Yes. Never gets old. So something you can see from this video is we are definitely not afraid to fail. That is definitely something we publicize, and we do a lot. But the only way to learn is by making mistakes, and it is what allowed us to revolutionize the launch market with the Falcon 9 rocket. We sacrificed some, payload mass to orbit in order to consider reusability, but this past year we hit over 70 launches on reused rockets and 100 total Falcon 9 rocket launches. So it's like a huge portion of what we've done this year alone. Over 93% of our launches were on reflown boosters, which is like a massive cost savings and really disrupting the industry. So it's incredibly exciting. And we already are scheduling 11th, 12th, and 13th flight launches for some of our boosters, which is super cool. The Falcon Heavy is our ultra heavy lift rocket. I hope you guys don't mind I threw a bunch of hype videos in here because I love them. You can let me know if you want me to skip them, but they just get me going every time. Just gets me juiced every time. So Falcon Heavy, excuse me, is currently the heaviest lift rocket on the market. This was from our proof of concept launch. And basically before you fly any customer payloads, you want to do some sort of demonstration to prove the rocket's capability, make sure it won't fold in half while you're launching it. So we just decided to yeet Elon's little roadster up into space. It's currently orbiting the sun. You can track it. There's like all sorts of websites showing you where in the night sky you can find Starman. We actually have 5 more Falcon Heavy launches this year, or this upcoming year in 2022. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. It's a sight to behold. It's like ridiculously powerful, and it's actually soon to be replaced by our Starship rocket. So the Dragon spacecraft I mentioned a bit earlier, it's our current crew capsule. It seats 7 passengers, and it's the only private spacecraft to fly people to the International Space Station. It's currently the only spacecraft flying out of the United States to take cargo or crew to the space station of like significant quantities. And we've actually already flown 3 crewed missions. Some of you guys may have seen the Netflix documentary on the Inspiration 4 launch that happened fairly recently. Super cool, would definitely recommend checking it out. It was like a private launch, and that's like a service that we're excited to be able to offer because Dragon is fully autonomous, so it's entirely hands off the controls if you would like it to be. And it's really like the future of spaceflight. You're basically sitting in your Tesla in space with your big 3 display screens, and we were able to even modify the version for the private spaceflight. 14 astronauts now into space with the Dragon vehicle from American soil, which is super cool. And we've also been flying on reused boosters for some of our crew flights as well, which is revolutionary because the standard theory was like, you want the brand new rocket, but then like, if you're getting on a plane and someone's like, this is the first time we've ever flown this plane, or they're like, no, this plane has flown before, like which one do you really want to be, right? So it's definitely something that we're pushing the boundaries on, and they're no longer flown boosters, they're flight-proven boosters. So a little summary of our first operational commercial crew program mission.
It feels great to be a part of this transition from a test program, a demonstration program, to an operational program.
After NASA certified Crew Dragon, Crew 1 is the first mission to the International Space Station. I feel very honored to be a part of this great mission.
When we're sitting on the launch pad, I think what's going to be going through my mind is I want to be in the moment and enjoy the experience.
There is just an electricity in the air as that countdown is happening. The engines light and liftoff occurs.
3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff.
Vehicles pitching downrange. Falcon 9 is supersonic. Stage separation confirmed. Dragon separation confirmed. Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
It's really hard to explain living and working in zero-G. It's fascinating how normal it becomes. It just feels like you've done it your whole life.
The only purpose of every spacecraft is to bring astronauts to space and bring them back safe.
Sometimes you have to leave something to understand how special it is. Getting the opportunity to go to space kind of gives you that same feeling about our home planet.
So one other really cool fact about our Dragon spacecraft, they're also designed to be reused, and we have already reflown 2 of them now. Or we will be reflying another one this Saturday. The Inspiration 4 mission was also a reflown capsule as well. And so they're designed for like up to 5 5 reflights, which means we don't have to make nearly as many of them, so we can save taxpayer dollars on mass emissions and also just make, prove out our systems and like reuse, parts is always a good thing instead of, tossing them in the ocean or sending them to a museum right away. We like to get a couple uses out at least. So now I'll talk about a little bit of the future of our company, although it's kind of already happening. So Starship is our vision for the future of space travel, of space infrastructure, and really the tool that will make humans multiplanetary. It's a fully and rapidly reusable rocket system that's designed for the first and second stage to both be reused. So basically, once it's fully operational, the cost of your launches is the cost of propellant. It's also going to be able to refuel in orbit, which dramatically expands your payload capability to other planets or the moon. And basically, it's the tool that will unlock the rest of the solar system for humankind. That's what we're driving towards. And this is some of the progress we've made in the last, less than a year on it. Now, the scale of Starship is just absolutely immense. It is about 3 times wider than the Falcon series of rockets. When it's fully stacked, it's the tallest rocket in human history, and it's also actually one of the tallest buildings in South Texas as well. The really exciting things are we're not just building like a bigger version of the same thing, we're trying to really look forward to how we can develop it for humankind to explore the solar system. So we're actually using methane propellant instead of like your traditional hydrogen or kerosene. And that's because you can actually manufacture methane on Mars. And so not having to carry your propellant with you drastically expands your range and allows for propellant depots or manufacturing sites in space instead of having to lug all that stuff from Earth. So it's a really exciting program. The pace is just honestly relentless towards making progress to getting us to orbit, and the payload capability is also just absolutely immense. One of the cooler facts as well is the payload capacity to low Earth orbit is actually the same as the payload capacity to Mars because you have the capability to refuel in orbit. So anything you can get up there once, you can send anywhere you want, which is really cool. And then the other pillar of our forward-looking plan for SpaceX and for the world is Starlink. Starlink is an interconnected mesh network of low Earth orbit satellites which will provide high bandwidth, low latency internet anywhere on the world, and all you need is a power connection. So you don't need to run cables or infrastructure on the ground. All you need is just a terminal from SpaceX, and you can connect into this mesh. And it is an incredibly optimistic goal, but we're already doing it. We already have over 1,600 satellites put into orbit. We're already serving over 100,000 customers, and the pace is also relentless with this as well. We've done a ton of really exciting work with helping people in disaster zones because you lose your internet pretty much immediately when there's a hurricane or a drought or a fire or something, and being able to just set up a terminal has been really helpful for a lot of first responders. We use a lot of First Nation tribes, or we provide the service for a lot of First Nation tribes in North America. on reservations where there isn't necessarily that infrastructure, and it's been really, really beneficial in COVID to provide students who don't have good internet access high-speed communications for Zoom or other classes and things like that. So it's a super, super exciting program. I work very closely with Starlink in my day-to-day, and we're hoping to come out of our beta phase very soon and be serving millions and millions of customers worldwide in the not-too-distant future. And then a real quick clip of us deploying some Starlink satellites. So that's the upper stage of Falcon 9 rocket deploying 60 Starlink satellites to orbit. One of the 20-something launches we've done of those satellites already. So that's the why SpaceX is super cool, in my opinion. This is why you should work there, if that wasn't enough convincing already. There's all sorts of excellent benefits for employees, even if you're straight out of school or an intern. As you can see, there's like anything you'd expect from any other job. You know, they cover you for healthcare, they cover you for benefits. There's all sorts of cool stuff with the stock options for full-time employees. And then the interns also have a really sweet deal where basically you are facilitated finding housing with other interns, and you get an assigned mentor and really cool projects. And then internships are also a really great way to get your foot in the door for a full-time position. A lot of other really important things we care about at SpaceX are ensuring our employees have really good networks to connect with. So there's a lot of social groups or employee networks within SpaceX that support minority communities and really ensure that everybody feels comfortable and welcomed. And there's also a huge push for people to start their own if they feel like there's a miss in our coverage. And it's something that's like constantly pushed by the executive team, that this is like one of the most important things for our company to make sure everybody feels included and has the facilities to succeed and to thrive. So amongst these, there's some really cool ones that I'm a part of. I do the beach volleyball every weekend, definitely do the mountain biking club, and there is also some really cool programs known as Liftoff for employee networks where you can be paired with a mentor as a new hire, and you can speak with individuals who have a lot more experience than you just about what it's like, you know, moving to California or being a SpaceX employee or just being a young adult. And it's entirely disconnected from the team that you work with, so it really feels like a counselor or just a buddy, which is really nice. And here's some pictures of some of those groups out of their events. We frequently have really fun pictures in front of the boosters for big events as well. You can see the Women at SpaceX group there as well, and the Veterans Day group. There's always events going on for SpaceX people. You can find us at the beach every weekend in LA, and it's always a really good crowd because everybody, you know, has the same mentality. Everybody's really excited about space, really passionate, but we also like to have a good time as well. These are also some of the other programs that partner with SpaceX. We're always looking for more partners to help expand our inclusivity and make sure that we're facilitating the voices that we need to hear to be successful and to make sure we're representing everybody correctly. So these are some really important programs that we have, and we're always looking for new opportunities as well. Common misconceptions. All right, I love this slide. These are the questions that I get asked at every career fair. SpaceX expects employees to work 80 to 100 hours per week. This is not true. So what I always tell people is, like, you hear these stories, but I have never ever once been asked, like, hey, you gotta work, 10 more hours. You gotta, really just like drive this thing home, take the number of hours you're supposed to work. It's just making sure that you're getting the work that you need to get done. And people really take that to heart because they care so much about the mission. It really reminds me a lot of when I worked on the Formula team here. There are those days where you're in the shop till 2 a.m. and you just gotta get your thing on the car, and so be it, but you're doing it because you want to. You're not doing it because someone's breathing down your neck, for sure. SpaceX does not care about your life outside of work. This is also not true. They care a lot, actually. They put on tons of events. Like I said, beach volleyball is like one of my favorite things. I'm trash at it, coming from Wisconsin, no offense, but like not a big beach volleyball sport area, but it's there's a lot of facilitating like new individuals and new groups. A lot of my coworkers are some of my best buds now, and they're always dragging me out to all sorts of new events, Dodger games or football games or whatever. And there's a really great community around SpaceX, and again, that really tight-knit group of passionate people makes for a really exciting group to be around. SpaceX won't hire me straight out of school for full-time roles. Another one that is also not true. That's exactly what they did for me. They hired me straight out of school for a full-time role. It happens all the time. We have had a few candidates from Wisconsin do the same thing. This is definitely one you hear a lot, but it's not so much about your stature in school, it's really about the experience you have and what you can bring to a team that matters to us. On that note, how can you get hired at SpaceX? So these are the requirements and preferences that we have. Some of these are from like ITAR laws, which are like arms trafficking, when you're basically building like a big missile, but it's not a missile. You have to have certain government requirements for that. And then on you guys' right side over there, we definitely say we prefer a GPA of 3.5 or higher, but that is definitely not a hard requirement. I know I was mentioning earlier that some of my coworkers like had to take like Calc 2 like 3 times. Some of them like almost dropped out of school, and now they're designing flight computers for the Dragon spacecraft. So grades are definitely a good way to get in the door, but it is not the only thing. The second check mark is really, really important. SpaceX really focuses on the idea of ownership. So it's not like the software team owns something. It's like, no, this one person owns this part. And so like, for example, I own several specific components. If there's any problem with them, people come to me, it's my responsibility, and that's what we're looking for in your extracurriculars or your out-of-school experience. So any project teams, any projects you've taken on personally, and anything you can point to your direct impact, that's something that we really, really highly value. As always, internship and co-op experience is super valuable. Just getting your hands on, being in the industry, and figuring out what's a good way to operate as an engineer professionally is super important. And then this last check mark is also one that is a big key for when people stand out in interviews. Drive, passion, and scrappiness. So the fundamental thing is if you are curious and excited and willing to hack something together just to make it good enough, just to get something off the ground, that's like one of the big things for us. Like when I applied to SpaceX, I didn't have like a ton of crazy project experience, but they liked my senior project design because you have like no budget, so you got to hack something together. And like that's what they're looking for, is the ability to find something, come up with a creative solution, and then drive it to completion and be able to show your tangible impact on what you've done. This is what the interview process looks like for full-time and internship roles. The full-time process is definitely a bit more in-depth, but we sort of say an internship is like a 3-month interview, basically. So if you're applying as an intern, you'll sort of apply to the bucket that is like most relevant to your experience. The recruiters will go through, as well as the engineers and team members, and we'll pull out resumes of people who seem like promising candidates. We'll do technical phone interviews, and then we'll hire those people on for a summer. For the full-time roles, there's a few more layers of screening. There's a bunch of technical phone interviews, as well as an on-site interview where you give like a presentation on a project you've done, with a few follow-on interviews, and then you have your HR stuff for the actual official hire offers and things like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the intern program right now. I suspect that's more relevant to most of you guys. It's, like I said, it's the best way to get hired is to have been an intern. That's definitely true, but it's definitely not the only way to get hired. It's a really cool program. I actually had an intern this summer, which is whack, because like I've been there for a few months, but he was great. And the key is like we give a tangible, finite project to each of our students, each of our interns, and give them the opportunity to go out and solve it and take ownership of this project and be able to point back and look at what their work was and give us a really good reason to hire them. And there's no like, hey, go design this box for this thing we kind of don't use anymore. It's like critical. Like the project that I gave my intern was we have this gigantic robot, basically. It's like 6 feet wide, but like 10 feet long. And I work on a satellite team. We roll our whole satellite in there, and it drives around and drops thermal interface material on all the locations where our computer chips sink heat into the chassis. And we're like, hey, we need this giant robot to work, and we need you to program all the things for it, and we need you to design it and make sure that it doesn't break when we're building our many, many $million satellites. You cool with that? He's like, and so that was his summer project, taking that on from start to finish. The thing works great, and we were able to give him a follow-on offer because he took ownership, drove it to completion, and figured out all the details in such a way that like when he handed the project off to us, it was fully complete. There was no more work to do, and that's like exactly what we look for in our intern candidates. Here's some of like the typical programs. We do all different seasons of internships. There's 2 types. There's the intern and the associate engineer. So associate is for postgraduate, basically. Sometimes people will do it between a bachelor's and a master's degree. That is also a really good way to try to get in for a full-time job. If you're not sure you want to work at SpaceX, it's a good way to get like a taste after you graduated without necessarily fully committing. They're the same length, they're a few months each. The distinction is the internship role is like an hourly pay, and the associate engineer is a salary role as well. And then you can see some other details there as well. Feel free to ask me any questions as well. So this is our like social media and careers pages. This is like where you should go for all your information on getting hired. That QR code will redirect you to our careers page, but we'll let the HR team know that it was from this event. And basically, this is like all applications have to come from online. I'm totally content to take your resumes. I love looking through them. And I have done that many times for Wisconsin students. So I'm like super hyped to do what I can to get more badges into SpaceX. But everything has to come through an online application as well. You can apply to as many roles as you think fit you. I would definitely encourage you to do so. And internships and full-time as well if you're looking at a full-time job. So there's also some really cool pictures on our Instagram and Twitter. And all the videos I snagged were from our YouTube feed. So definitely encourage you to check those out. I definitely get stuck at work sometimes, just like watching those for like an hour at a time when I'm eating lunch. It's I just can't believe it's real sometimes. It's pretty cool. So with that, please hit me up. Any questions? I'll be here for quite a while. I'll also be hanging at the library this afternoon. Not like the studying library, like the one on the corner over there. So if you guys have any questions, I have some business cards up here. And thank you guys for your time.